Ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to talk about why your med spa's marketing doesn't work and what you can do about it. Because I've talked to a lot of med spas up until this point, and a lot of the times there's a lot of frustration because they worked with a marketing agency that made all these promises, and then the advertising that they did for them didn't work. Or maybe you tried some advertising or marketing on your own, and it didn't work. Like you tried Groupon, and the leads that you were getting from Groupon weren't buying anything, or you tried Facebook ads and they weren't working. And so in this video, I want to give you a very simple structure and framework that you can use to always identify what your problem is so that you can fix it. And the reason that I wanted to make this video in the first place is because I have often found with a lot of the med spa owners that I've talked to, and also just in my business as well, that a lot of the times it feels like there's 1,000 different things that we have to fix in our business, right? At all times, there's like a million different things, and it's hard to know what you should pick or what you should focus on in order to kind of break through to the next piece. And I think something that's really important to understand is this theory of bottlenecks, or the theory of constraints, right? And the theory of constraints essentially says that once you identify the bottleneck in your business and you free it up, the entire system starts to work better. And so in this video, we're going to talk about how you can have a simple framework that you can use 100% of the time to effectively figure out what your bottleneck is in your med spa's marketing, so that you can figure out what you need to fix. So just to get us introed here, a lot of med spas that I've talked to, they've tried running ads, or they've tried doing some form of advertising. Groupon, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. They post it organically on Instagram. They post it organically on Facebook. And for whatever reason, they either didn't get any leads, right? Or they got leads and the leads never responded, or the leads that responded never booked an appointment, or the ones that did book an appointment never showed up, and the ones that did show up never bought a treatment plan. And so you probably determined from your Facebook ads or whatever marketing that you were doing that they don't work, right? This doesn't work for my business. These leads suck. This form of marketing doesn't work in my local area. There's, something out of my control, there's an external problem outside of my control that is stopping this from working for me, right? Now, what we want to shift to, and what we want to shift to thinking instead, is that when we go through the same process and, maybe we didn't get any leads, or we did get leads and they weren't responding, they weren't booking appointments, they weren't showing up, they didn't buy anything. Instead of thinking, oh, well, this just doesn't work for me, we want to shift our focus to thinking this is likely a strategy or an execution problem which I can fix. And I think this is a really important mindset to shift to have before we get into the framework that I'm going to talk about here, because it gives power back to you as the business owner, right? If we're just constantly blaming everything in our surroundings on why this didn't work, then you are always going to struggle. But if you start to kind of take a little bit of responsibility for the things that aren't working in your marketing funnel, or if your agency, the agency that you're working with, which should be doing this in the first place, if they start to take responsibility for the things that they are responsible for in terms of your marketing, then we can identify the problem that you're currently facing, and then figure out what we need to focus on, the one or maybe two things that we need to focus on to fix that problem. So enough talk, let's just hop right into it. So how do we identify what your marketing bottleneck is? Or in other words, how do we figure out what one thing isn't working in your marketing funnel, so that if you just fix that one thing, the entire system or the entire process starts to work better? And you know what, before I even hop into this, if you think about it, right, if we never get any leads, right, if we never got any leads, then the rest of the system does not matter. We can have the best, we can have the absolute best process in the world in terms of turning leads into people who are buying treatment plans, but it doesn't matter if we don't have any leads, right? Or let's say we are getting leads, but we are really struggling with getting people to show up to their appointment, right? It doesn't matter how many leads we get, how many appointments we book, if they're not showing up. And so we need to identify what the bottleneck is in your marketing system, so that you can then fix it, and then the entire rest of the system starts to run more smoothly. So the first question to ask here is, do you consistently attract new leads to your business, to your med spa? Keyword here is consistently. So I'm not talking about, a referral that you get once or twice every single month, or, word of mouth, or people just like randomly stumbling upon your social media or finding you on Google. The question to answer here is, do you consistently attract new leads to your business? So you know that on a consistent basis, you are going to get 5 new leads every single week, 10 new leads every single week. For example, I have a client that I'm running an Sculpt Neo campaign for right now. And in our campaign so far this month, and it hasn't even been a month yet, we have generated I think like 130 leads or something like that, right? And that's why I love paid ads, because when you're doing them correctly, it is a consistent way to get leads. But the first question is, do you consistently attract new leads? If you rely purely on word of mouth and referrals, the answer is no 100% of the time, unless like you just have like a really solid referral program that you've like mastered and is working. But for most people, if you say no to this, what that means is that you have an advertising problem. So if you are not consistently attracting new leads into your business, and the way that I define a lead is just someone who put their hand up and indicated that they were interested in something that you solve, or interested in one of your solutions, and usually that's going to be in the form of like a name, email, and phone number, like an opt-in for something. If you get their contact details, which indicates that they are interested, that is what a lead is. If you're not getting enough of those, then you have an advertising problem. Now, for med spas, there's really only three ways for you to advertise your products and services. Like, there are three big overall categories, and then of course there's all sorts of subcategories, but there's really only three ways for you to advertise your med spa. The first one is content, right? So you can post content online and offline. So online content would be Instagram posts, Facebook posts, YouTube content, that kind of thing. Offline content, like maybe if you got an article featured in a local newspaper, or maybe you got a local feature with a local news station or something like that. Paid ads is the second way. So this is where you pay for ads such as like Facebook ads, Instagram ads. This also kind of falls into the category of like, if you set up like a local table at a local event and you bought access, you bought the table and then you get access to all the people that are going to the event. That's sort of like a form of paid ads as well. It's just like offline paid ads. Billboards are offline paid ads. That kind of thing. And then partnerships is really the third way. And partnerships in this case would be like if you set up a partnership with a local business, and you said, hey, for every lead that you send my way, I'll give you $5 and we'll send people your way, and we expect this compensation, right? So you have some kind of partnership with somebody. Now you're probably thinking like, oh, well, what about this thing that I did before that doesn't fall into these three categories? Like pretty much everything falls into one of these three categories. The only fourth way would be outreach, but as a med spa, like you're probably not reaching out to people one-on-one unless you do like flyers and stuff like that. But for example, like Groupon, I would consider Groupon sort of like a combination of a partnership and a paid ad, because you're sort of like partnering with Groupon. You're getting access to all of their eyeballs for free, but then you have to pay a cut for every sale that you make, and you're paying Groupon money for every sale that you make. It's sort of similar to paid ads in that sense too, where you're basically paying for their traffic, right? But the question here is, if you have an advertising problem, if you're not getting enough leads in your med spa on a weekly or monthly basis, then you need to ratchet up one of these three things, right? So you need to start posting more content and get good at posting content that attracts people into your business, that, fill out a form or do something, they take the next step. You need to ratchet up paid ads, right? So if you're not running paid ads right now, or you worked with an agency before that like screwed you over, you need to give it another try with someone who actually knows what they're doing. And there's probably something that you were doing before that was incorrect. Or you need to start setting up some local partnerships, right? So really, these are the three core buckets that you could focus on in terms of advertising. So I would just pick like one of these three and focus on it. My favorite is paid ads, because when you do it correctly, it is a faucet that you can turn off and on to consistently get new leads into your business. And so if you are willing to make the investment into ads, it can be one of the most worthwhile pursuits for you. But if you fix your lead problem, so you choose one of these three things and you fix your lead problem, now when I ask this question, your answer is yes, right? So do you consistently attract new leads into your business? If the answer is yes, then you can move forward to the next question. The next question here is, do your leads respond to your communications? So if you get somebody to put their hand up and say, hey, I'm interested in this thing, they gave you your name, email, and phone number, and then you reach out to that person, whether you text them, you call them, you email them, whatever it is, do they respond, right? Do you have people, a high percentage of the leads that you're getting actually respond to your texts and your emails? If the answer is no, like if you're getting a very low percentage of people to respond, then you probably have either an offer problem or a follow-up problem. So the offer that you made to that person to get them to put their hand up and say they're interested, like let's say you were doing like a $97 intro package, and people put their hand up and submit their information for that. If they're not responding, then it's possible that you have an offer problem, that the offer that you're running just isn't irresistible enough. And so people kind of put their hand up and said, yeah, I'm interested for a little bit more information, but they weren't like super interested in general. However, if you fix your offer and make it more irresistible, then you can get a higher percentage of people to respond to your communication. Or you have a follow-up problem, right? So if you're just not reaching out to people enough, then you're never going to have people responding to your communication. So like, this is the problem that I see all the time, where people call their leads once or text their leads one time, and then if they don't respond, they just like throw them into a bucket, and they're like, okay, we'll reach back out to that person 3 years from now, which means you're never going to reach back out to them, right? With follow-up, like, especially with Facebook ads and ads in general, we're typically following up with people by calling them at least 4 times in the first 3 days. And then we're usually texting people several times over the 14-day span after they fill out their form. And so that's like a bare minimum that we're doing. We're also leaving voicemails. We're sending some emails in there as well. And so if you're not getting people to respond to your communications, and you're like, yeah, we only call and text our leads one time, then that's the problem that you should probably be focusing on, right? But if you have a really strong follow-up system and people aren't responding, then it's likely that you have an offer problem, right? Unless you're just like, your messages aren't getting delivered for some reason, most likely then you have an offer problem, and I would focus on making a better offer. But once you fix these problems and you have leads that are actually responding to your communications, the next question to ask is, do at least 30 to 50% of your leads schedule an appointment with you? Okay, so 30 to 50%. If you get 50 leads in a month, we want to try to get like 25 of those leads to schedule an appointment. On the lower end, whatever 30% of that would be, like 15 or whatever it is, right? So if the answer is no, 30 to 50% of your leads are not scheduling. So if you have like 10% of your leads that you're getting on a monthly basis scheduling an appointment with you, then you either have an offer problem, and you'll see that this is the offer is going to come up time and time again. You either have an offer problem or an appointment setting problem, right? So if your offer is not irresistible enough and people are responding to your messages, just getting a little bit more information, but then they're like, oh, I'm not interested, then it is likely that you have an offer problem, because people hear the offer, they hear more details, and they're like, oh, well, that's not as good as 123 Med Spa down the street that's doing something better, right? Or you have an appointment setting problem. So let's say you call people, you get them on the phone. The script that you use to get people from being just a lead to booking an appointment with you is very important. And I am constantly making changes to the script that I use for my clients. Like every single day, I'm making tiny tweaks and adjustments based on how people are responding. And so if you are having issues where you're getting people on the phone and they're responding to your communications, they're responding to your emails, your texts, but they're not booking appointments, you probably have an appointment setting problem. And you need to think about, okay, can we write better text scripts? Can we write better email scripts when people respond to us? Can we write a better phone script for when people pick up? And then from there, if you fix these 2 problems, I can guarantee that you will start setting more appointments. So once you have 30 to 50% of your leads actually scheduling an appointment, the next question to ask is, do at least 50 to 70% of your appointments actually show up for their appointment? 50 on the low end, right? So if we're booking 10 appointments in a week or something, on the bare minimum, we need 5 of them to show up, right? We really want to be aiming for like 60 to 80%, but I would say bare minimum to move to the next problem here would be 50%. And so if the answer is no, if you have 30%, 20%, 10% of your appointments actually showing up, then you either have an offer problem again, right? If your offer is not irresistible enough, if the thing that we were advertising in the first place, whether it was through your content, through your paid ads, when you bought a table at that local event and people wrote their name down on a piece of paper for you, you might have an offer problem if people aren't showing up, because again, it's just not exciting enough for them to actually show up to their appointment. You might have a reminder problem. So you're not sending people enough confirmations and reminders with pieces of content and stuff to get them excited for their appointment. You might have an invisible funnel problem. So this one's actually really interesting. If people book an appointment with you and then they look up your name on Google and they can't find anything, or they find 1-star reviews, or your social media content is just kind of like weird and outdated, then people might not show up to their appointment because they're like, oh, I just scheduled an appointment with this really sketchy business, right? Or again, you have an appointment setting problem, because ideally up here in our appointment setting script, we want to be collecting a deposit or a card on file. And if people aren't showing up to their appointment, then you might have something in your script where you're saying like, oh yeah, just come in for the free consult. Like, no worries. Like we trust that you're going to show up, but then they don't show up, right? So that might be an appointment setting problem as well. So these are the 4 problems you would want to focus on fixing first before you decide that Facebook ads don't work for you. After this, if you're getting 50 to 70% of your appointments to actually show up, the next problem is, do at least 20 to 40% of your appointments close. Okay, and this isn't just closing on like the $97 package they came in for. This is closing on some kind of treatment plan. Usually a treatment plan is going to be anywhere from $1,000 all the way up to $5,000 or more. And so the question is, do at least 20 to 40% of the appointments that you actually schedule and show up close, right? So if we get 5 people to show up in the week, we should really have, what would that be? Like 1 person at the bare minimum closing on a treatment plan or a package of some sort. If the answer is no, if you're not closing anybody, if you're closing 10% of people, then you either have a consultation problem. Okay. So the consultation that you're running people through is not getting them super excited. It's not showing them where they are now and where they want to go, and then bridging your service as the gap to get them there. You likely have a scripting issue there. You probably have a like first time visit problem. So usually what we want to do when people come in is we want to have them fill out an intake form, and then we're going to collect some information about them. We're going to ask them some questions. We're going to run through the consultation. We're going to explain to them how what you do at your med spa is a little bit different from everybody else. And then you are going to position the package or the treatment as the thing, the vehicle that gets them to where they want to go. So if you have a sales problem and you're not, closing enough people, then it could very likely be a first visit or a consultation problem. Or it could be a package or treatment plan problem. So the package or the treatment plan that you are presenting to people is either like a one-size-fits-all package that isn't really tailored to them. It's not exciting or enticing. There aren't like bonuses or incentives included to make that really exciting for someone. It's much better to create a package that is more personalized to somebody. So you listen to their problems, you understand their goals. They tell you very clearly and quantifiably where they want to get. And then you say, okay, based on where you want to get, these are the things I believe that we need to do. This is the price for that. And then you have some incentives to get them to like prepay up front and all sorts of different stuff, right? And so if you are not closing 20 to 40% of your appointments, then you either have a consult problem, a package or treatment problem, and I also kind of want to throw in here as well, it could just be like a first visit problem. So like if you're not giving people a good experience on the first visit, if you don't engineer your first visit in a very specific way so that people get excited and they see how amazing it is, and you're asking all the right questions, then you're likely not going to get the sale. But if you fix all those problems and you're closing 20 to 40% of your appointments, then you have a very solid marketing system, right? So if we just go back up here, if you are consistently attracting new leads into your business on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, if your leads are responding to your communications, and I would really say like, I don't know, 70 to 80% of your leads are responding to your communications. If 30 to 50% of your leads are scheduling an appointment, if 50 to 70% of your appointments are actually showing, if 20 to 40% of your appointments are closing into a package, then you have a really solid marketing system. And then likely that means that you should just ratchet up your advertising, right? Like if you have all these pieces in place, then you can go back up to the top here and say, increase your ad budget, or start finding more local events to go to, or start making more partnerships with other businesses in your local area, or like double down on content on Instagram if that's where you're seeing a lot of appointments come in through, right? Because once you have all of these pieces, then you can start to scale. But you really want to get these pieces in place first before you think about scaling. And then eventually you're going to have other problems like, oh man, I need to hire more people because of how much flow we're getting in and all that kind of fun stuff, which is, a topic for another video that I'm probably not even qualified to talk about. But with all that said, I hope this video was helpful in helping you identify where your current bottleneck is. I would take some time to really sit down and figure out where yours is. And then from there, you can pinpoint, okay, like, all right, I have an appointment showing issue. Like people are not showing up to their appointments. So we need to focus on these 4 problems. I need to make sure that the offer is really irresistible. I need to make sure we're sending plenty of confirmations and reminders. I need to fix our invisible funnel. So I need to Google our name and see what comes up. And we need to make sure that we are setting appointments in the proper way to ensure that people show up, right? That's just one example. But identify your bottleneck, focus on the fixes that you can focus on, and then you will finally see that once you start to fix these things and once you start to see improvements, the entire system starts to open up and flow much better. And so before you determine Facebook ads don't work for my business and the leads suck, focus on finding the bottleneck and fixing the bottleneck. Hope this video is helpful.